was loud, the lights were warm, and laughter floated through the grand ballroom. But 12-year-old Grace Whitmore had never felt so invisible in her life. Sitting quietly in her wheelchair near the edge of the wedding hall, she watched people glide past her as if she were part of the daycare. She wasn't crying. She had learned long ago not to. But something inside her chest ached in a way she couldn't explain. Grace was the daughter of Daniel Whitmore, the powerful CEO of a global tech company. To the outside world, Daniel had everything: wealth, influence, respect. But none of that mattered to Grace in that moment. Tonight her aunt was getting married and the entire extended family had gathered. Dresses shimmered, suits were crisp, and conversations buzzed with excitement. Yet not a single person had asked Grace to dance, sit with them, or even how she was feeling. Grace had been paralyzed from the waist down after a car accident 3 years earlier. Since then, she had grown used to the sideways glances, the forced smiles, and the awkward silence. Adults often didn't know what to say to her, so they said nothing at all. Children stared, then were quickly pulled away. At events like this, she felt like a shadow, present but unseen. Daniel noticed, of course. From across the room, he watched his daughter with a tightening chest. He wanted to rush to her side, but he was constantly being stopped, congratulated, questioned, pulled into business conversations even at a wedding. He smiled politely, but inside he felt like he was failing Grace all over again. He had built an empire, yet he couldn't build a moment of belonging for his own child. Grace lowered her eyes and focused on the patterns in the marble floor. She told herself it was fine. She told herself she was used to it. Still, when the bride and groom took to the dance floor for their first dance, a tear slipped down her cheek. She quickly wiped it away, hoping no one noticed. That was when Michael Carter walked into the room. Michael wasn't part of the glamorous crowd. He wore a simple suit that had clearly been worn before, and his shoes were polished but old. He was a single father to a 7-year-old boy named Noah, and he had been invited because he worked as a freelance photographer hired for the wedding. His wife had passed away years earlier, and life since then had been a careful balance of work, parenting, and quiet grief. As Michael adjusted his camera and scanned the room for candid moments, his eyes landed on Grace. He noticed her immediately, not because of the wheelchair, but because of the loneliness written across her face. He recognized that look. He had seen it in the mirror after long nights when Noah cried for his mother. He had seen it in his son when other kids asked why his mom never came to school events. Michael hesitated. He knew how sensitive situations like this could be, but something inside him nudged him forward. He walked over and crouched slightly so he was at Grace's eye level. "Hi," he said gently. "I'm Michael. Mind if I sit here for a moment?" Grace looked surprised. Adults usually talked to her father first. She nodded slowly. "Okay." Michael smiled. "Weddings can be a lot, huh?" Grace let out a small, humorless laugh. "Yeah, everyone's busy." Michael glanced around, then back at her. "You know, I think the room's missing something important." Grace frowned. "What?" "A dancer," he said simply. Grace blinked. "I can't dance." Michael tilted his head. "Says who?" She gestured to her legs. "They don't work." Michael nodded, not dismissing it, not sugarcoating it. "That's true, but dancing isn't just about legs, it's about joy." Grace didn't respond, but something in her expression shifted, curiosity mixed with fear. Before she could say anything else, Michael stood up and cleared his throat. He raised his hand slightly to get attention. At first, people ignored him. Then a few turned. Then more. The music faded as the DJ paused, confused. Michael spoke loudly but calmly. "Excuse me, everyone. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I need a moment." Daniel Whitmore turned, startled. His heart jumped when he saw the man standing next to Grace. Instinctively, he started toward them. Michael continued, "I've been watching this beautiful wedding, and I've seen a lot of dancing, laughing, and celebrating. But I've also seen someone special being left out." The room grew quiet. Michael turned toward Grace and extended his hand. "Grace, would you honor me with a dance?" Gasps rippled through the crowd. Someone whispered, "That's the CEO's daughter." Another murmured, "How inappropriate." Grace's heart pounded. Every eye was on her now. She looked at her father, panic rising, afraid she was about to be pitied, or worse, embarrassed. Daniel froze, unsure whether to step in or stay back. Grace swallowed. I don't know how." Michael smiled warmly. "Neither do I," he said, "but we can figure it out together." Slowly trembling, Grace placed her hand in his. Michael gently wheeled her onto the dance floor. He didn't spin her or lift her. He simply moved with her, swaying, turning, matching the rhythm. He encouraged her to lift her arms, to move her shoulders, to laugh. At first, Grace was stiff, self-conscious. Then she heard something unexpected: applause. Someone started clapping in time with the music, then another, and another. Grace laughed, a real laugh, bright and unrestrained. Daniel felt tears blur his vision. The bride wiped her eyes. The groom smiled wide. Children gathered near the dance floor, watching Grace twirl her arms like wings. For the first time in years, Grace didn't feel invisible. When the song ended, the room erupted into applause. Grace's cheeks were flushed, her eyes shining. Michael leaned down. "See, you dance beautifully." Grace whispered, "Thank you." Daniel approached, emotion heavy in his voice. "I'm Grace's father, Daniel Whitmore." He paused, then added, "I don't know how to thank you." Michael shrugged slightly. "You don't need to, I just didn't want her to feel alone." Daniel looked at his daughter, standing taller in her wheelchair than he had ever seen her. In that moment, he realized something painful and powerful. All his wealth hadn't protected Grace from loneliness. Kindness had. The rest of the night was different. Guests took turns dancing with Grace. Children asked her questions. Laughter followed her everywhere. She wasn't the girl in the wheelchair anymore. She was just Grace. Weeks later, Daniel called Michael into his office. Michael was nervous, expecting perhaps a complaint for disrupting the wedding. Instead, Daniel said, "I want to fund a program, dance and art therapy for children with disabilities, and I want you involved." Michael was stunned. "Why me?" Daniel smiled. "Because you saw my daughter when others didn't." Grace later joined them, holding a sketchbook. "Mr. Carter," she said shyly, "I'm drawing again." Michael smiled. "I'm glad." That wedding became more than a celebration of marriage. It became a reminder that sometimes the smallest act of courage, speaking up, reaching out, can change a life. And for Grace, it was the night she learned she was never broken, just waiting for the right music.